reimburse naman po ng PhilHealth, ang test kit ay galing sa donasyon at ang gastos para sa pagpapatakbo ng laboratorio at RT-PCR cartridge-based PCR machine na gamit sa pag-test ay gastos ng gobyerno. So iba-iba po ang singil ng PhilHealth. Depende po sa kung nakatanggap ba ng subsidy o nakatanggap ba ng donasyon o nakatanggap ng mga iba pang supplies ang mga laboratories. Usually ito naman po ay sa mga pampublikong mga laboratorio. Nung araw po, ng mga private laboratories, meron pong tulong binibigay ng DOH, bahagi po ng kanyang capacity building for our laboratory capacity. So, yan po ang akin masasabi. At ang Gene Expert cartridge-based PCR, tama po si Kwong Janet, meron na rin pong singil dito at 3-tiered din. 2,287 ang pinakamataas, sunod ang 1,099 at ang pinakamababa 1,059. Alinsunod doon sa mga kondisyon na, doon sa mga conditions na akin pong binanggit kanina patungkol po doon sa RT-PCR naman. So 3-tiered po ito depending on the support that the laboratory and mostly the national government laboratories are the ones receiving either donations or supplies as part of subsidies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretary Duque.
Mr.
chair now
Chair,
recognized.
if I may, Mr. Chair, may I appeal for a 2 minutes extension because I had to reiterate the question kasi po iba po ang unang pag-intindi, maybe because of virtual assessment. May I appeal?
One more question,
Mr.
Congresswoman Garin. One more question, please. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chair, can I have one question and one comment lang po sa huli?
Go.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
please
Chair.
proceed.
Yeah, be that as it may, I'm going to expound on that, Honorable Secretary, on the plenary budget deliberation. Kasi maganda po yan sa salita, pero in actuality, in implementation, mahirap po. Now, we are hearing Metro Manila, as an example, even Iloilo City, as an example, is now inviting people from the provinces to avail a vaccination from them. Maganda naman po ito kasi nagkakaroon ng tulungan. However, if we look at the real essence of public health, which is actually availability and accessibility, hindi po ba na napakahirap na bibiyahe pa yung ating mga kababayan sa probinsya para magpabakuna sa Metro Manila? No? Yung mga taga Pampanga, Bulacan, Cavite, pupunta pa sa Metro Manila dahil mas marami ang bakuna. Do you see this as a lapse in vaccine distribution?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, we have our National Vaccination Operation Center head, chaired by Yusek Mirna. What I understand is there is an allocation plan for all regions, which in turn allocate this to the various local government units. But there is an allocation plan. So I don't clearly understand, with all due respect, why people from Pampanga or from Pangasinan will go to Metro Manila to get inoculated. So we stick by the allocation formula, and there are parameters. Yusek Kabutahe can clearly elucidate on. Kindly recognize Yusek Kabutahe, Mr. Chairman.
Yusek, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Congresswoman Garin. The initial plan and the initial strategy was focus and expand. Hence, we concentrated on areas which are surge areas. Metro Manila had 2 surges already, and areas which are densely populated. Starting September up to the end of the year, we are now doing the expand strategy where Secretary Congresswoman Garin is correct. We will now give according to the population of the different areas. So we will now start distributing more for the peripheral areas based on their population, and not while we are still addressing some of the surge areas, the focus areas. Majority will now go to Region 3 and 4A based on population and based on unvaccinated, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusek. One last comment, Congresswoman Garin.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, maraming salamat po. May I appeal to the leadership of the Department of Health to help explain and convey to the people. Kasi nakakalimutan po ng karamihan. Minsan, kaliwat kanan po na batikos ang natatanggap ng ating government hospitals dahil punong-puno sila. But realistically and scientifically speaking, our government COVID hospitals are actually one of the best in our country. Of course, with courtesy to the private hospitals, magagaling din sila. Pero karamihan po na magagaling when it comes to handling of COVID patients are those from our government hospitals dahil mas nakasanayan nila, mas marami silang na-handle na kaso. At siguro kailangan bigyang pugay ng ating mga kababayan, yung ating mga exclusively and dedicated COVID hospitals who have almost perfected the handling of COVID patients. And I'm referring to San Lazaro, RITM, Jose Reyes, and even the Tala Hospital. Can the Secretary confirm this, Mr. Chair? At maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Congresswoman Garin. The Chair recognizes Congressman Edsel Lagman.
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes.
I would like to confirm the words of commendation that is being proposed by the Honorable Janet Garin. But I also would like to add the Philippines among the hospitals that have been mentioned. And all of these
So, Arlene,
hospitals have, in fact, reach a level of proficiency or mastery in managing severe and COVID cases and improving the chances of survival and reducing helping contribute to a lower case fatality rate. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Duque. The Chair recognizes Congresswoman Arlene Brosas. Representative Arlene Brosas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. To my question, Mr. Chair, going back, many Filipinos advocate have urged the government to sign the Trade-Related Intellectual Property Rights or TRIPS waiver, a proposal to halt intellectual property protection for products and technologies used in the fight against COVID-19, including vaccines, for the duration of the pandemic. Does the Philippine government support the proposal to suspend patents for COVID-19 vaccines, treatment, and technologies as the world deals with the coronavirus pandemic? Pumirma ba ang gobyerno dito, Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary?
Mr. Chairman, kindly recognize Director Melissa Guerrero of the Pharmaceutical Division.
Director, you're recognized.
Good afternoon to everyone. So this is to confirm that we have submitted our position on the TRIPS waiver, and we are also a signatory to another resolution on strengthening the local capacity for vaccine and medicine manufacturing.
Mr. Chair, what is the position of the Philippine government?
Madam, we do support the TRIPS waiver. It is a means for us to really promote the manufacturing locally of COVID-19 vaccines, but we are also building the capacity together with the Department of Science and Technology. We are preparing a roadmap for vaccine sustainability.
You did sign Mr. Chair. You did sign. Yes or no lang po?
Yes po, we did sign.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Ayan. Kasi po, alam niyo yung halaga ng vaccine equity, no? Not only in our country, kundi sa mga mahihirap din nating bansa, no? Sigurado po kayo na nag-sign kayo?
Yes,
Philippine
ma'am,
government?
we can submit our
May we have a
paper.
copy of that?
Yes, ma'am, we can submit the position paper.
Kasi ang balita ko ay naging part lang ng negotiation pero hindi pa specifically sumusupport sa waiver. So nag-sign po.
Yes, we did sign and then we expressed our position during the last World Health Assembly. We can submit the position paper.
Okay. So, Mr. Secretary, tama po ba you support the waiver, no?
Yes, the signing of that agreement is a confirmation of the support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next question ko po, the proposed budget para doon sa East Avenue Medical Center na binawasan ng 24% from 2.70 billion to 1.88 billion na lang. Bakit po ini-slash yung budget ng East Avenue Medical Center? And actually, Mr. Chair, hindi lang po yan eh. I believe merong mga MOOPs pa particular na binawasan no, ng mga hospitals. Ilan po yung mga hospital na binawasan natin, particularly ng MOOP, ng funding po?
Mr. Chairman, we're just looking into the list of hospitals where MOOE reductions were made. We can submit, Mr. Chairman, for interest of time. We can do that within the day.
Okay. Thank you, Secretary Duque. Would that be okay, Congresswoman Brosas?
Yes, Mr. Chair, may we know the reason? Kasi siguro, Mr. Chair, the important thing is we should know the reason bakit pinabawasan yung mga ospital, specifically yung mga COVID-19 referral hospitals in the country. Hindi po natin kailangan bawasan ngayon yung mga ospital natin. Ano po ang naging reason? Ito ba yung actual na hiningi na pondo ng DOH?
Mr. Chairman, I have the information with me that it is the capital outlay where they slash that part of the budget, which is actually a one-time investment. But for PS, we have a 5% increase from 2021 GAA of 1.23 to 1285 for a 5% increase. For MOOE, we have a 6% increase from 560 million thereabouts to 595 million thereabouts. So yun lang po. Yung operating expense and PS, MOOE and PS parehong tumaas by 5 and 6% respectively.
Yes, Mr. Chair, kaya po gusto nating malaman specifically kung ano-anong mga ospital. Ibig sabihin nag-increase yung iba ay binawasan. And yung PS actually po, yan po yung sinasabi nga natin na ilang percent lang in fact mas malaki pa rin talaga yung allotment or yung allocation natin na mga projects ng DPWH particular sa mga infra. hindi ng ospital at hindi ng mga pangangailangan natin sa health, no? Tama po ba, Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, can we have the question repeated? I'm sorry, medyo hindi lang po maganda yung
Congresswoman
aking reception.
Brosas, can you repeat your question?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I was telling the good secretary, ano po ba yung mga ospital na ito? Merong mga ospital na tinaasan ang PS or yung dahil may mga infrastructure na gagawin. Pero yung MOOE ay binawasan. Tama po ba, Mr. Chair? Pero ang sinabi niyo po kanina, meron kayong total ng increase ng MOOEs. May we have that data?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we will do that. We will give you the data. In general, the MOOE actually increased from 7,640,000,000 to 8.8 billion, representing a 16.47% increase. This is for the operation of regional hospitals. The operation of Metro Manila hospitals registered an increase from 2.5 billion thereabouts to 2.96 billion for a difference of 443,383,000, representing a 70.56% increase. But we will give you a list of individual hospitals as you have manifested, Mr. Chair. We will submit to the committee. And also, I would like to add that the hospitals being recipients of PhilHealth reimbursements, they can actually, by law, use these revenues. No? I think 25% of the revenues can be used for equipment and infrastructure expansion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretary Duque. Congresswoman Brosas, your time is actually up.
Mr. Chair, siguro
One more
meron pa
question.
yung last na lang yung sinabi natin kanina kung bakit may massive budget cuts sa health technology assessment saka 18% decrease ng budget para sa FDA. Alam naman po natin yung role ng FDA, mag-continue po ito sa vaccine monitoring, emergency use authorization, potential full approval, at yung long-term efficacy and safety ng vaccine. And yung sa health technology assessment, alam niyo po, itong institution na ito created through the Universal Healthcare Act or RA 11223. Bakit po natin sila binawasan ng pondo?
Mr. Chairman, that was a reduction implemented by the DBM, as can be seen in the NEP. However, I would like to reiterate that we will include this as among the items that we will appeal with the DBM for the restoration of the original proposal from the DOH on for HTAC budget.
Thank you, Secretary Duque.
Mr. Chair, may
Chair.
I wrap up? Last na po.
Okay.
Mr.
One last
Chair.
comment.
Mr. Chair, we find it extremely talaga bizarre na ang proposal natin sa 2022 budget, walang definite funding for vaccines. Kanina po, despite the raging pandemic and with COVID-19 cases breaching the 2 million mark, itong 45 billion na unprogrammed fund or booster shots, drawing pa lang ito sa ngayon dahil di naman natin tiyak yung pagpondo dito. Yung East Avenue Medical Center po, yung tinatanong ko kanina, babawasan ng pondo. Yung mga iba pang mga tinanong ko kanina na babawasan ng pondo. Samantala po meron tayong NTF-LCAC, halimbawa, sure na may pondong 30.42 billion. Higit na mataas kumpara sa 19.1 billion nito ngayong taon. Ibig sabihin, meron pa silang pinupuno na 19.1 billion tapos meron pa tayong ilalaan na 30.42 billion at napakalaking pondo po nito na pwede talagang gamitin para sa pandemya. Ganito katagilid po ang prioridad ng Duterte administration sa panahon na kaliwat kanan yung pagkakasakit ng mamamayan natin. Punuan po ang mga ospital kapos ang suporta sa mga manggagawang pangkalusugan. Kaya Mr. Chair, this is not a pandemic budget, Mr. Chair. Kailangan po natin ayusin ito. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Congresswoman Brosas. The chair recognizes Congressman Carlos Zarate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Magandang hapon muli. Can I be heard sa plenary?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. Dugtong na lang din ito, Mr. Chair, doon sa mga naiwanan kong katanungan kanina, doon sa budget cuts, although yung iba na tanong na rin. Ang isang nakakabahala lang sa akin, Mr. Chair, ang RITM, the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, no? Pwede bang maliwanag, shortly lang ni Secretary Duque, bakit yung kanyang operating expenses ay nabawasan ng 170 million? Napakalaki ng papel ng RITM, di po ba, sa nagaganap pa rin ngayong raging pandemic, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chairman, may I kindly request you recognize Director Celia Carlos, who would know the details of why, if it was proposed, but I doubt it that this was proposed to be reduced. And she probably can enlighten us on this. Director Celia Carlos, Mr. Chairman, kindly recognize.
Director Carlos, you're recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Congressman Zarate. The budget cut of 170 million is from the line item of National Reference Laboratories.
Yes.
Yes, sir. So we have actually appealed this budget cut as part of the DOH package of appeals. And it will be very difficult for us to continue addressing this pandemic if this budget cut will be pursued. So we have filed an appeal that will be reconsidered. And in fact, we have requested for an increase for an additional budget for the National Reference Labs for the coming 2022 budget.
Thank you, Director. I commiserate with you. Tama po yun, Mr. Chair. Ano? Napakalaki ng papel ng RITM at hindi ko talaga maisip bakit ang National Reference Laboratory na ito ay kaltasan mo ng 170 million na tayo ay nasa isang napakatinding crisis nitong pandemya ng COVID na ito. No? Today, it's 16,000. The other day, 22,000. We breached the 2 million mark. And this is not really acceptable, Mr. Chair, while we spend, naglalagay tayo ng napakalaking pondo sa mga items na pwede pa namang hindi punduhan. So again, Mr. Chair, I hope at the proper time, the Chair will support to restore this 170 million for the budget of RITM. Ano? Then again, Mr. Chair, tuloy pa rin doon sa pagbabawas ng budget dahil as we mentioned, parang hindi ito budget na tugon sa pandemic, no? Dahil binabawasan yung mga importanteng mga budgetary items. May I now get the response from DOH why since 2020 binawasan rin ang budget ng epidemiology and disease surveillance, Mr. Chair, no? I'll cite the figures. In GAA 2020, the budget for epidemiology and disease surveillance, it's 115 million. GAA 2021, it went to 158. But in NEP 2022, it went down to 113 million, Mr. Chair. Bakit ganun po ang naging napakalaking kabawasan ng budget na ito, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chairman, the original proposal of the DOH, 1.4 billion thereabouts, kasama na rin po yung regional epidemiology and surveillance capacities. At ang nangyari po rito ay binawasan na 213,069,000 DBM confirmation draft NEP as of July 16. At ganun pa din hanggang ngayon ang NEP So ang apela ng inyo pong DOH sa DBM ay i-restore yung 1,437,000,000 budget thereabouts dahil napakamahalaga po talaga ang aspetong ito, lalo na po sa usapin universal healthcare at sa panahon ng pandemya ay susi po itong epidemiology and surveillance sa pangangasiwa nitong maayos na pangangasiwa ng ating pandemya tungo sa containment if not elimination of the pandemic virus. So iaapila na namin po ito, Mr. Chairman, and I give you our reassurance.
Salamat po, Mr. Chair, Secretary Duque. Kayo na po ang nagsabi na susi itong mga ahensyang ito na binawasan ng pondo para malabanan natin itong pandemya ng COVID. Kaya again, hindi ko pa rin talaga maintindihan bakit sinasabing pandemic budget ito. Tinaasan mo ang red tagging agency na NTF-ELCAC from 19 billion to almost 30 billion. But here is an agency na talagang nasa frontline in the combat against COVID-19 ay binawasan. Now, Mr. Chair, this representation, I hope the chair of this subcommittee will support. This representation will propose amendments to the DOH budget to restore the cuts and give appropriate budget to hospitals and other health programs that will truly help in our fight against COVID-19. Now, on to my final manifestation, Mr. Chair, but before that, isang straight na tanong lang kay Secretary Duque, arising from his responses to our colleagues previously. So itong nangyayari talaga ngayon, Mr. Chair, Secretary Duque, sa ating rollout ng bakuna na although nag-increase na kulang pa rin, napapagalan pa rin tayo dahil napakaraming rehiyon pa rin ang hindi nakakatanggap ng enough those numbers of vaccine. And inaamin nyo rin na napakahalaga talaga pala ng papel ng testing, which in the previous year and even this past months are just being not ignored, taken very lightly. Kahit na yung target ninyo na 90,000 a day ay hindi pa rin naaabot hanggang ngayon. And of course, contact tracing from the previous threshold na 1 is to I think 35 or 37, binaba na sa 1 is to 15. Hanggang ngayon, ang nangyayaring contact tracing is nasa 1 is to 5 or 1 is to 7. Malayo pa rin doon sa gusto nating abutin. And of course, treatment. Inaamin na rin kanina, napakamahal
Congressman
ng mga
Zarate,
gamot.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Your
I'm
time
just
is
winding
up.
up, Mr. Chair. I'm just
Kindly
winding
wind
up.
down.
Napakamahal pa rin ng treatment. So, straight na tanong, Secretary Duque, ang atin pong tinutungo ngayon is not even to reach herd immunity at the end of the year. Tama po ba? Kung hindi, talagang mabakunahan lang natin at mabigyan ng booster ang ating mga mamamayan para tumawid tayo sa sunod na taon at malabanan itong mga iba't ibang mga variants na ito, Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary.
Sinasangayunan po namin yung posisyon ni Honorable Zarate at yung atin naman pong doses for this year ay sapat na at fully budgeted. Ngayon, yung booster dose, antayin lang po natin yung technical report ng all experts group and the vaccine expert panel. Isusumiti po ito sa IATF at kapag nagkaroon na po ng malinaw na rekomendasyon na kinakailangan ng booster dose, ay sisiguraduhin po na ipapasa namin ito sa Department of Finance na siya naman po ang nag-commit na sisiguraduhin mapondohan itong booster dose requirement kung sakasakaling meron ng recommendation which is expected next week, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Thank you,
Mr.
Secretary Duque.
Secretary. Again,
Congressman
the point
Zarate, for your last manifestation, please.
Yes, just the manifestation, Mr. Chair, no? Uh, sa nakita natin ngayon sa budget presentation nga, halimbawa doon sa napakalaking itinaas ng budget ng PhilHealth, no? Nadagdagan ito ng 8.6.38 billion, no? And if we have that kind of increase sa PhilHealth, pwede sigurong yung mga kinaltasan, no, na ay mailipat ito doon sa nakaltasan. Halimbawa sa budget ng hospitals na 3.163 billion ang nakaltas, sa MOOE ng GOCC hospitals na 1.9 billion ang nakaltas, sa UPPGH 1.3 billion, total budget cuts on the national reference laboratories aggregating to 226.76 billion, and there are more, no? So, Mr. Chair, again, we seek the support of the chair of this subcommittee na at the proper time, we have to restore this budget and we have to put enough funds, no? Hindi yung ipapangutang pa natin yung mga bakuna for next year, no, or for the booster shots, no, na gagawin dahil sa nakikita nga nating pagkalat pa rin nitong pandemya ng COVID-19. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair, for
Thank you, Congressman Carlos Zarate.
accommodation.
The chair recognizes Representative Sara Ilago.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. Tungkol po ito sa impact ng full devolution sa nutrition. We're gravely concerned, Mr. Chair, because we only have one nutritionist per 177,000 of our population. So may we know from the NNC what's the plan for the jump-starting of full devolution in nutrition for the year 2022?
Mr. Chairman, kindly recognize Executive Director, Assistant Secretary Dayang Hirang.
Executive Director ASEC, you recognize.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. I don't think the head is on board. However, we take note of the question. We will promptly relay this to the NNC for their official statement on the issue.
Mr. Chair, maaari na lang magsumite sa komite tungkol po dito sa plano na full devolution sa nutrition. Bukod po sa lack of manpower for the effective implementation of this, we're also concerned about the budget, yung mga requirements para dun sa mga LGUs na wala pa pong nakatabi o napakaliit talaga nung maaari na magamit na pondo para dito at matiyak yung pagpapaunlad ng nutrisyon. Kaya bukod sa plano, hingin din natin yung timeline. Ano ba yung mga budgetary requirements para po matiyak natin ang pagpapaunlad ng nutrisyon para sa lahat. Ngayon po, katanungan lang hinggil sa PhilHealth Board restructuring. Sang-ayon po ba sa provided ng ating batas, nagkaroon na ba ng restructuring sa PhilHealth Board? Meron na ba tayong mga sectoral representatives as required by the law?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I recall, the PhilHealth Board membership is in accordance with the UHC law. So definitely we have sectoral representations in the board, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, hingin po natin yung mga detalye kung paano tayo mas mahigpit pa na makikipag-ugnayan sa mga sectoral reps na ito. Kung nagkaroon na nga ng restructuring sang-ayon sa sinasaad ng batas. Now, Mr. Chair, that's my final question. I'd just like to reiterate our request for the report on the status of the National Mental Health Law, as well as a report on the regional breakdown per region of the budget for epidemiology and disease surveillance, as well as the budget for our national reference laboratories. That's all, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Congresswoman Sarah Ilago.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just be allowed for a quick manifestation.
Yes, please go ahead,
My
Secretary.
officials have raised this. In my presentation earlier, I put as the budget for attached corporations a total of 75.96 billion. But when the correct computation was made, the correction for the record, it should be 84.68 billion. However, the total is still the same at 242.22 billion. Thank you. Just to spread on record, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The COMSEC will take note of that.
I would like to also acknowledge this was raised by Kong Stella Kimbo. Thank you, Your Honor, for calling us out on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Stella Kimbo. We're down to the last two members, Mr. Secretary. The chair will recognize Congresswoman Euphemia Colamat. Representative Euphemia Colamat, you're recognized.
Maraming salamat ulit, Mr. Chair. Kulyamat, Mr. Chair. Euphemia Kulyamat. Okay.
Kulyamat.
Mr. Chair, karugtong din ito yung tanong ko kanina, yung hindi doon sa hiring, no? Mr. Chair, kung lahat ng bakanting 14K positions, kung lahat doktor, no? Kung lahat itong doktor, yung 14K positions, ibig bang sabihin, Mr. Chair, kakaunti ang graduate ng medisina o kakaunti ang gustong magtrabaho sa bansa o sa gobyerno, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chairman, yung kadahilanan po kung bakit malaki pa rin itong ating unfilled plantilla positions, marami po ito eh. Yung isa ho dyan, yung mga aplikante ay hindi po sapat. Yung iba mas gusto sa mga academic institutions ang kanilang residency o magtrabaho sa mga pribadong ospital o magtatag ng sariling practice. Marami pong mga dahilan. Ganun pa man, pinag-aaralan po namin ang malaman kung bakit nga ba may mga posisyon na tila parang iniilagan at ayaw applyan ng atin pong mga doktor. Lahat po naman to mga doktor, ang nag-a-apply. So, meron po tayong mga residency positions. Yun naman po ay sapat ang applicants. Although may mga ibang lugar na hindi po rin napupuno yung mga residency positions na iyan. At kanya tinitignan po namin, kanya-kanyang ospital ay may mga sarili-sarili din na mga dahilan at amin pong iintindihin ito at sa ngayon ang amin pong direksyon ay magkaroon ng scholarship for doctors and other human resource for health cadres at ganun din po sa pag-convert ng mga posisyon na ito, palawigin ang mga posisyon na kung saan mas gusto ng mga doktor mag-apply. Salamat po.
Mr. Chair, maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. Kung ganun, Mr. Chair, dapat magkaroon tayo ng sagawa tayo ng kampanya, no? para dumami ang bagong doktor natin. Lalo't kailangan sila sa panahon ng pandemya. Ano ang plano ng DOH dito? Paano pabilisin ang hiring ng mga doctors?
Yung pong dagdag ko lang sa nabanggit ko kanina, pinapalawag din po natin ang ating scholarship program ng Department of Health at bukas po ito sa mga atin po mga kababayan mula sa mga indigenous peoples at hinihikayat po namin na mag-apply ang mga kumakatawan sa IPs sa aming regional DOH at makipag-ugnayan po sa central office para mabigyan po ng mga scholarships. Salamat po, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, dapat nga hindi natin tinitipid o pinagdadamutan ng kalinga ang ating mga kababayan. Ilang trilyon ang pundo natin pero kulang na kulang tayo sa mga doctors at manggagawang pangkalusugan. Gayong nasa bingit tayo ng di masolusyon ng pandemya. No? Huwag nating hintayin tuluyan maglaho ang COVID bago pa tayo mag-hire ng kinakailangang dami ng healthcare worker. Yung 14K unfilled position na yan ay hindi katipiran ng gobyerno kung maraming kababayan natin ang magkasakit o mamamatay. Kabawasan yan ng ekonomiya ng bansa. Ito lamang po, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat.
Daghang salamat. Thank you, Representative Euphemia Kuliamat. The Chair recognizes DS Bienvenido Abante. Deputy Speaker Bienvenido Abante. The Chair recognizes Representative Paul Dasa for his manifestation. Representative Paul Dasa for his manifestation. The Chair recognizes Representative Paul Dasa for his manifestation.
Please unmute.
Kindly unmute Representative Paul Dasa. The Chair recognizes Representative Paul Dasa for his manifestation.
Mr. Chair, I think we are running out of time. We have to let go of Secretary Duque and the rest of the DOH family. It's been
Yes.
how
Almost
many
9 hours.
Almost 10 hours already.
10 hours
Let us be human because may gagawin pa si DOH. With that, Mr. Chair, there's no other matter to discuss. I move to terminate this budget briefing of the DOH. So move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Congresswoman Jam Baronda.
Thank you.
Before we adjourn, in behalf of the members of Congress, I would just like to extend my deepest gratitude to Secretary Duque, to our resource persons, and to all our officials and representatives from the DOH. Today was, like Congresswoman Jam said, 10 hours, almost 10 hours of interpellation, responses, and discussion. Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence, Secretary Duque. This hearing is adjourned.
Budget briefing for
Thank you very much.
This budget briefing for the Department of Health is terminated.
Briefing is suspended. Briefing is suspended.
Briefing is suspended.
Until tomorrow, sir.
Until tomorrow. Picture na lang.
Okay na yun, sir?
Okay na.
Yeah, Ha? Check, bumalik pa si Gasa ko.
Ano bang ginagawa ng kasama kong sistema sa amin?
Uy, amin yung ano, ano yung titira niyo sa akin?
Yung bibigyan namin lahat sa inyo ng mga ano,
Oo.
mga Xerox po.
Sige. Basta may iniiwan sila ito. Ito na, ito, mga attendance, yan. Iniiwan yung attendance.
Yung mga Xerox sa kayo na rin bahala.
Oo, lahat.
O di, iwan ko lang ito, papatagman ko lang si Sir.
Sige.
Pati with the certificate to, kaya lang Sir.
May certificate sa inyo na yan. Wala. May certificate bang kasama to?
Ano lang po yan, kasi yan ang babayaran niyo.
Ay, oo. Oo, yung
Oo,
certification. Okay.
Kaya itong day na to Sir, kasi hindi ko makita yung IPRS eh.
Yan, tama.
Dapat ilagay yung-
Certification.
Dapat
saka
ilagay yung ano, yung
signatory.
pangalan
Wala
na.
na.
Mabahala na kayo.
Wala.